welcome to the inaugural podcast of Medals of Mayhem. My name is Patrick Armstrong, and I am the owner-operator of Heritage Metal Service, a metal mounting company from southwestern Ontario and has been in operation since 2003. Medals of Mayhem started as a YouTube show many years ago where I highlighted medals and had the chance to speak with some incredible recipients and share information. After a few years of hiatus, Medals of Mayhem is back in the podcast edition, and our focus is on education, information, and celebration of the Canadian Honours and Awards system, and focusing on those who work diligently to educate about medals and highlight those awarded to them. I'm with Andrew Siwy of Victory Medals. Andrew, you're a veteran, firefighter, medal knowledge extraordinaire, and I think a great role model for medal mounters everywhere. And one of the reasons I have you as my first guest, you really put together our Facebook group. I like to call it the Canadian Medal Mounter Association, but you are the one who really unified, I think, all of us that do this. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Actually, it's really nice to hear that. When I formed the group, I mainly thought it would be a great place for us to connect and give tips and maybe find out where we can get obscure ribbon and stuff. So to see it come together in like a friendship is really cool, because I think that I consider us more the top tier metal mounters, the ones that put a little more of our pride into it than maybe the average, base tailor. And that's not to take anything away from base tailors, but there are some we all know that are out there that it's a 9 to 5 for them and they kind of just put it together and move on. So to see those top tier people that pour their heart into our craft come together like this is really cool. A little about myself, though. Started in the military in 2001, just before 9/11. Served 15 years as a reservist with the Queen's York Rangers and the British Columbia Regiment. Served 2 tours in Afghanistan in 2006-07 and 2009. And joined the Vancouver Fire Rescue Services in 2014. I guess some of my passion came from my family's military history. My brother served, just retired recently. My dad served for a short period of time. Grandfather, grandmother, and great-grandfather. And really what kind of got me into metal mounting was the poor quality I saw in a lot of the workmanship out there. And I saw a friend of mine, or my RSM, who's now my friend, Sean Clark, he was doing his own metal mounting. And I just could see the quality difference was night and day. So I figured, how about I take these apart and just do the same thing and just use the best quality materials I could, and obviously take as much time as I could because they're my metals, so I had all the time in the world. And I realized it's actually, for me, wasn't very difficult. And of course, looking back on my first work, going back almost 20 years to where I am now, there's huge differences in some areas, but the overall quality is still there because the materials are good. So yeah, there's some definite skill you need, but if you don't have the right materials and the right tools, it's going to fall apart. So like, people sometimes ask me why I charge significantly more than the base tailor. Well, I have like a $400 saw outside with a guard that gets a 0 clearance. That guard alone was $250. So it's little things. Is it necessary? No, I could probably get away with it, but it ensures that every product I put out is consistently of that high quality.
Oh, I agree, and I look at someone like Martell's, or you look at Leah, who posts, I think, every day, and their quality is incredible, versus, and I know way back when, the base tailor, we all took them there, and they've done wonderful work. A lot of them are contracted out now to our companies, and it has to be something you have a passion. You may not know this, but you and I share a SWASM.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of photos. I'm not very photogenic, so I don't share that a lot, but kind of one of the more rarer of the Afghan medals. And
that's interesting. I hate to jump around here, but you're going to ask what my favorite medal was.
Yeah.
And I always feel kind of weird because I'm lucky enough to have my favorite medal, and that's the SWASM, due to the symbolic nature of it. Like, there's so much thought put into it. And sadly, I think it's if you look through all the medals, it's our last operation-specific medal. So for our audience, now we have the General Campaign Star, General Service Medal, Operational Service Medal, and we're losing a lot of that history and that culture behind it, where in 100 years from now, you're not going to know if you see someone with an SSM grouping, did that person earn it from Germany or did they earn it from Ukraine? or Poland or Latvia. Like you're losing that heritage. But the SWASM, if you don't mind, I can go into that a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? I figured we're gonna jump around. You got two metal nerds. I'm fascinated. The SWASM, the reverse, it's such a tie into the Korean metal.
Yes, I was hoping you'd say that.
It's beautiful. I'm stealing your thunder. You go ahead.
Well, yeah. On that note, what's ironic about it is the Korean medal for that has Hercules stabbing a Hydra with a sword, and the back of the reverse of the SWASM is just a Canadian sword, a sword with a maple leaf stabbing a Hydra. And what's ironic is Korea was called the Forgotten War, and how symbolic is it that right now we're fighting to have Afghanistan declared a war officially.
Yes.
You know, it's kind of, there's some parallels there. But aside from that, the color scheme of the ribbon, the sand color is obvious. You know, it's our operational theater. The black and the white, a lot of people don't know it's a direct tie into 9/11.
Yep.
It's to mourn those that we lost in 9/11. And sorry, the red is the bloodshed of those on 9/11, and the white is the quest for peace. Like, it's just so wrapped in so nicely. And the bar, Afghanistan, it's like, it's clear as day what it's for. So it's all these nuances that the government and those in charge in those areas really have to do the legwork in advance to foresee these things in the future. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, jumping into some of my pet peeves, one of them is a Diamond Jubilee medal or a coronation medal is roughly, I think it's about $60 to $80 ish for the government to make, ballpark. Whereas our operational medals are about in the $40 range. So you're making a lesser quality medal for those that actually serve in a theater of war than you are for a Jubilee medal, which I'm not taking away from what that represents. It's just, I think we can all agree going off and risking your life should warrant a level of quality equal to, at least, of a Jubilee.
Absolutely. And I guess I probably should put a disclaimer at the beginning of this that when we talk about medals, there is never a disparity. There's never a minimization of anything anybody has earned. The one thing, going back to the SWASM, the Southwest Asia Service Medal, for those that don't live in acronyms like the rest of us, it, along with something like the Sacrifice Medal and the Sovereign's Medal for volunteers, the reverse is so much. No, Queen Elizabeth is wonderful. I love her. I would have much rather seen the Royal Cipher on the back and those beautiful reverses as the obverse, as the front. The Sacrifice Medal. Absolutely. Especially.
You know, I always found that funny because when I was a child, I was collecting coins, and I think it was my mom told me I was displaying them, and she goes, "Oh, you're actually displaying them wrong." And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well, the front is the Queen," and I went, "No, it isn't. Like, no, the Queen's on all of them, so that's obviously the back." And I think if you asked any kid that, they'd be like, "Yeah, you're gonna have a different design on the front, and all the trade work, copyright stuff is on the back." Yeah. You know, for lack of a better expression. Yeah, you lose a lot of that, and maybe a cool thing would be if you only have one medal, you have to display the monarch, but if you have more than one, all the rest can be the reverse, which would be kind of cool. Obviously a nightmare for mounters and stuff, but I guess there's no perfect solution. Once you get awarded a medal, you're part of almost like a little association where you basically say, "Hey, I've received an honor. I'm agreeing to wear them as protocol states." Because like I was told to take my ISAF bar off my General Campaign Star, and that pissed me off. Like, you've been awarded something and now we want to remove it. The only time that generally happens is if you screwed up. So, but I thought about it, and the intent behind it, although I think they could have done it better. I think they could have said, okay, we're going to allow ISAF and we're going to have roto bars, no different than the SWASM with the Afghanistan bar.
Absolutely.
Say going forward, we're not going to have bars for missions.
Yes.
However, I understand there's lots of people with multiple bars, and now it's going to be an issue having space. So you just make do. I don't think you should have had to return the bar. I think that should have been your personal gift still from the government, and you can display that in a different way. And I display mine below my medals where they're framed. Other people, I've mounted it to a piece of ribbon and then put that on the back of their medals.
I've done that too.
It's still with their set. Oh, nice.
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, it's a piece of history, and it's
Yep.
it might not seem like much, but it's like, no, I was given that, and it's a part of my life, and I remember seeing that acronym on my whole tour every single day. There's a little piece of what that was to me at that time.
Yeah, there was a real confusion in the late 2000s when it came to the medals, getting them out, the campaign star, the General Service Medal, great concept, but then didn't really go any further because now all of a sudden we had the Operational Service Medal to kind of clean up that mess, and the SSM becomes the stopgap.
I think the people in the honors and awards section, I think they at DHNR, and I think what they did was they wanted to kind of align us back to Great Britain a bit, right? Because that's where you get a lot of those GSMs and that kind of stuff. And even now our mounting regulations have gone back to the UK, which I agree with. I think some more thought should have been put into that, and some discussion perhaps with us as medal mounters, like, hey, are there any issues with doing this? Maybe do what Australia does, have a median in between. Instead of 4 inch and 3.5, you go 3 3/4. Because right now we have two standards, 3.5, unless you need more space, then you can go to 3 3/4. Well, why not just say 3 3/4? So everyone's the same.
You still have services that are running 4. Because
Yes,
nothing's officially come out from the Governor General stating thou
That's right.
shall be 3.5.
That's right.
So really we have 3 standards.
That's
and
right.
it is confusing when I take them in. What standard am I running today? So,
That's right. And I think Defense Metals has basically said on their website, like, as of this date, we're doing 3.5 across the board unless you specifically state otherwise. And while that's nice to put out, and I applaud Chris for it, I can imagine he still has the odd guy that's like, why is it not 4? And here's a cool note about our group and our community is Chris McCreary is the god of our stuff. He wrote, like, we jokingly call it the Bible. I ordered the book thinking it's a Canadian publication. It's 800 pages or so. It's going to be half English, half French. It'll be you flip it upside down and you get the other half. When I got it and it was full color, all English, or you could order a French version, I was blown away. Like the detail that he covers. So when the Coronation Medal came out, I reached out to him because I actually communicated with him to write the foreword of my book for Vancouver Fire. These problems with the Jubilees breaking, and he went, "Oh no, I specifically asked them to beef it up." And we had one come apart. Apparently, one of our mounters in our group had it come apart, and he showed the post. Like, it didn't break; it slipped off, and it's like a 1/16 of an inch thick now, whereas before it was like 5 hairs thick. So I always tell every customer when I remount a Jubilee, I tell them, I'm like, there's a possibility about a 1 in 10 that this might break. Here are your options before we go ahead. So, because the last thing you want to do is explain it after, because then they're going to go, well, did you break it? And that's what I hate is people trust you with their medals, but if anything slightly goes wrong, some customers will immediately go on the offensive and go, well, what did you do?
Yeah, like you said, if you come out at the beginning, I do that with the
Yes.
CD, older CDs.
Finish?
If I see hot glue, I have had where when I'm carefully removing, it starts to take off that gilt.
That's right. Yeah, the CD, the newer ones are very nice quality. However, one of my other, we could just do a show on pet peeves.
I know.
One of my other pet peeves is the Mint makes most of the metals. They still have Rideau and a couple others that make metals. But they're a coin maker, and a very good coin maker. And they figure, okay, these are metals. We want them to look good. They got it's a 24 karat gold finish. Microns thin. It's not thick at all. So they have to protect that. So they clear coat it. Well, soldiers, when we wear our medals, and police, fire, and everyone else, but mostly soldiers because we wear them more often, gets rained on. There's minerals in the rain. It breaks. A UV will hit it, and the clear coat starts to come off. Well, on a general service medal, it's, for lack of a better term, it's just a nickel metal that's plated with like high quality chrome. You can't wreck that finish. The CD, if you try to remove the clear coat by rubbing it off, you'll polish the gold. And I know that the hard way because I did it to mine. But I found a way to remove that clear coat safely. But again, I always discuss it with the customer, like, hey, I've done this before. I've removed the clear coat and then I coat it with Renaissance wax so it's safe. However, there's always a risk that something could go sideways. Are you okay with that? So yeah, it's funny. Like, one thing, an interesting set I did a big order for District of North Van Fire, And I knew it was coming in a couple months. And I said, okay, well, they're all 20-year medals and 25-year medals. So I'll cut all the backs. Like, I got the ribbon. So I'll just cut all the backs. I know the spacing I need to drill the holes. So I spent one whole day just going through like 20 of them. I went through that whole roll of ribbon. And then, 2 months later, I get these medals in. And I get my new roll of ribbon out. And I put it on the backings. And the ribbon from the same manufacturer was like half a mil or a mil wider. So I took all those backings and threw them in the garbage, right? Like, just things that people don't see. They don't, and would it have worked? 100%. Would it have looked okay? Yeah. For the average person, they wouldn't notice a difference, but not something I would want to wear. So into the garbage they went.
That's crazy, because I did that, again, preemptively, and didn't use the same ribbon that I had used on the backing. I grabbed the next kind of clump of it, and it didn't fit. And I don't think people realize that for most Canadian ribbons, it's 32 millimeters, but it varies. It can be 31, 31 and a half, 32.
Yeah.
And then
there was a batch of CD ribbon I got that was 40 mil instead of 38. And
wow.
I was ticked at first, right? It was from TKS, like our official supplier. At first I was ticked, and I wanted to just get through it as much as I could. Like, nothing wrong with it. And for use, it was fine. It was just an OCD thing I had. So I'm like, I better get through this so that way I don't have any issues in the future. Not that I should, but just clear it out. So I went through it. And then the tail end of that roll, I realized, crap, I should have saved this. Because when another metal, like a Jubilee, goes beside a CD, it doesn't sit nice. But that extra millimeter on each side allowed it to sit perfectly. And I'm like, oh man, if I just saved this just for Jubilees, it would have been perfect, So it's kind of things you learn as you go.
One thing I did want to talk about, my goal is to have a medal highlight each episode. And I want to start, I guess, with the Canadian Peacekeeping Service Medal, because I believe it's one of the most misunderstood of our modern awards. And just some quick facts. It was established in October 1999, first awarded September 2000. It does replace the Peace Bar from the Special Service Medal, and is awarded for 30 days minimum of cumulative service for a UN or international peacekeeping mission. Really interesting is people think that every NATO mission qualifies for it, and I know Vigilance doesn't. And it does kind of break that rule of not having two medals for the same mission, just the first one. There's no bar to it. Once you've been awarded it, that's it. The front has the 3 unarmed observer Canadian peacekeepers. It has peacekeeping in English and French, and the reverse has the Royal Cipher with Canada. Suspenders, a single toe claw attached to a straight slot bar with the maple leaf on the suspender, and the ribbon is 32 millimeters. And this is what I love about modern Canadian honors. As you brought up with SWASM, the colors mean something. So the center stripe is UN blue, the white represents peace, the red represents the bloodshed in the service of peace, and green represents service. And I think that's incredible that we've kept that tradition.
For sure. It's one medal I like working with, just from strictly a working point of view. But what I like is it's a single piece, right? So you're not going to have the bottom portion pop off. It's strong. There's nothing to break on it. So like longevity-wise, it's great. The only thing I dislike is the finish is hit or miss. But I find that's usually the member that causes that. If there's someone that's in the, a lot of mess dinners and they're bumping into people and they're not doing that kind of shoulder kind of pull in, and wasn't there walking by people, it gets banged up quite a bit. I have found Renaissance wax can take a lot of that, like make it look really nice. But yeah, it's a great medal to work with, and I've learned a lot about it this past year because of Kyle Scott. As much as I know about medals, you can't know everything, and you're obviously going to steer towards your points of interest. And not that peacekeeping isn't my point of interest, but I never served on a peacekeeping mission, so I didn't dive deep into it. I didn't realize it's the 30 days, and if you're in Bosnia and you're there for 36 days and then you get sent home for whatever reason, you'd get that medal and not the NATO medal to go with it, or the UN medal. So a lot of people don't know that, and you'll get those angry comments on your posts like, why is there no NATO medal? I always find it funny. Why don't people ask it in a more curious manner? Like, how
Yes.
did they get are they missing a medal? It's always this like, where's this? Why isn't this done like that? And that's what was really cool about medals, is finding that history. But it's interesting that it's recognizing peacekeeping service, of course, but also recognizing that the peacekeeper was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, like as a collective.
Yes.
And to have a form of recognition to give to someone, to say, hey, this is so important that the collective was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, and you have a little tangible piece of that, in a sense,
Yes.
is pretty cool. I have seen the flip side where people go a little overboard and they put Nobel, like a bar, on the medal.
Yes.
That's, in my opinion, that's defacing a medal. So
Yep.
I understand their intent, as a conversation piece, a piece of history, but that's not really the right way to do it.
I've seen people that want numerals, tour numerals put on them as well. And I think, but you already have that by,
That's right.
if you have your Cypress and you have your MFO, there's your tour numeral
That's right.
that you've done too, and then you have that third recognizing the 30 days service. Yeah, it's a really misunderstood one, and like you said, it's really interesting when you post a photo and has a CPSM and there's no UN and there's only some NATO, and I think people need to know that basically after, I think, former Yugo, Macedonia, and Kosovo, it's hit and miss what other NATO. Obviously, the non-Article 5 Balkans, that qualifies. But once you get into some of the more obscure ones, it doesn't always work out to receive it. But people, they're so quick to just, oh, he doesn't deserve it because there's not a UN medal after. And like you said, there's stories. That's what
right.
I want to know.
Yeah, and I think that leads to a good point. Like, this is just me as a casual historian, amateur historian going into it, is, well, why did NATO missions even qualify for peacekeeping? And, you look at Bosnia, and it was a UN tour to begin with, and went into NATO because the development of what was happening there, and it still didn't bridge into war. So it's not common for NATO to get involved in peacekeeping. It's just not their role. UN is where you go for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then if things kind of get even more messy, then okay, we're going to bring possibly NATO into the fold. At least that's what happened back then. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of NATO peacekeeping tours in the future at all. I just think they don't want to have that body there because people associate it with a military context, whereas the UN, a blue beret, you're a neutral party to this, essentially. Because you're representing the United Nations, not your home country. So I don't think we'll see it in the future. And I think that's a good thing, because I think we should separate the two. And if you're wearing a blue beret, people should understand, hey, they're not being driven by their home country. They're being driven by the United Nations. And ideally, that's how we'd like to see things done. Of course, war and conflict is much more complex than that.
I do want to know, what is your favorite medal set you've mounted?
Yeah, I gave this one a lot of thought, because I've been mounting medals total, almost 20 years, starting with my own set, but professionally for 13 years. And I really thought about it, and it's like, oh, of course, that set. And I have two answers. So my first answer is my great-grandfather's set. And of course, it's because there's a connection there. They hadn't been remounted since his death, and probably since like the 70s or so, 80s maybe. But he served in World War I, he served in Waziristan, and he served in World War II.
Wow.
So it was just a cool set, like to have the World War I medals, Waziristan, the General Service Medal for India, which is not very common. And then World War II, and then he had meritorious service and long service, and he had long service as an NCO and as an officer. So, because in England they have separate medals, and they even have separate medals for different services, Air Force, Navy, and Army. So it's just a really unique set. And I remember working on it, and he was a really cool guy because he wrote an autobiography for the family and had it published. And he mentioned his favorite Highland song because he served with the Black Watch in the UK. And I thought, well, I got to play that song while I'm mounting him, right? Like that's what I love about medals, is it feels like a part of that person. It's a connection. And so when I was working on his set, it was like, wow, like he touched these, he knew about them. And two other points in his autobiography that gave me goosebumps were when I got my SWASM. It's one of the, well, I shouldn't say few, but it is one of the few Canadian awards that isn't engraved with your name and particulars. And I found that frustrating. It's like, if I lost this and someone tore my set apart, I would never know if that was my actual SWASM if I was able to search for it.
Yeah.
So I had mine hand engraved. Like I brought it to someone in the interior. It's on the rim so no one can see it. So it's, is that defacing it? Well, I just think it's a lack of oversight and expense by the government not to have had it engraved. So I figured, I'm going to engrave it with the proper format. So I was reading his book, and my great-grandfather wrote, he goes, my favorite medal, because he was talking about his service in India, he goes, I was awarded the General Service Medal for India, and it's my favorite medal because it represents the mission. It's got the castle on the back where we drove past, daily or whatever, all this symbology. He goes, and they thought enough to engrave our name on it, and they didn't do that in World War II. And I just like, oh my God, like I had the same, thought process. And here it is in a paragraph in his book, like the connection through history, right? It's like, is he up there? But later in that chapter, he talked about his undressed ribbons. And he had his World War I ribbons, so the British War Medal and Victory Medal undress. And someone in the officers' mess said, hey, you served in World War I? And a lot of the people then, then demobilized. So there weren't actually as many World War I vets as you'd think. And he goes, he's, served through like the Gallipoli campaign in that area. And he goes, stay right there. There's someone I want you to meet. So he pulls this guy over and he goes, this is Aircraftsman Shaw. And my great-grandfather goes, you're T.E. Lawrence. And he goes, could you keep it down? He met Lawrence of Arabia. And Lawrence of Arabia, after the war, changed his name to Shaw, and he became an aircraftsman. He wanted to still stay in the military, but he knew his popularity was so big, he had his name changed. And of course, with the internet today, I looked it up, and sure enough, all the particulars matched. Like, because at first I was like, is this just one of those stories? And it's like, well, when he wrote his autobiography, he couldn't have just like went on Google and said, oh, okay, make up a story. It's like, holy crap, like he had a beer with Lawrence of Arabia. Like, that's pretty
incredible.
Cool. And I actually have his undressed ribbons, and I almost chucked them, and I hate to say that, but I have all this stuff from him, and they're beat up, and I went, I have his medals, and these might have been redone. And after reading that, I ran back and I looked at them, and I went, these are leather, like the backing, like this is old. These might have been the undressed ribbons that he was wearing when he spoke to Lawrence of Arabia. Like, holy cow.
That's incredible.
Just make that connection, right? So that whole set is definitely my favorite. Aside from personal favorites, I would say any medal that is pre-World War I is definitely up there, because I think World War I, even though obviously if you took a soldier from today and a soldier from World War I, they're vastly different. But if you go from World War I to the Boer War, it's almost the same difference. Like you're fighting in totally different fighting styles. I don't know if they were using not muskets, but like older, they were using the Enfields. But going back into the 1800s a little bit further, 1880s and stuff, like you're looking at totally different helmets and going into battle in essentially a dress uniform. So it's almost a disconnect. It's a fairy tale when you're like mounting those medals. You're like, I can't even understand what these people were as soldiers compared to what World War I soldiers were.
It's funny you say that, because I look at the Boer War and I think that is only one step removed from the Civil War. You and the Civil War soldier would be using almost similar tactics and equipment that wasn't that much more advanced. And then all of a sudden you jump ahead, and World War I was like nothing anyone had ever seen.
That's right.
For technology, tactics. So it's funny that you and I, we get that same, I've always seen that as the divide. Is that Boer War was the last of the, I think modernization really kicked in World War I, and it was like nothing anyone had ever seen. So that's incredible.
Yeah, there's a set I have a set that I'm working on now for a museum. They have like the Khedive, I can't pronounce it, Khedive, Egypt, star, and some medals from that campaign.
A beautiful medal.
It is. Yeah, it's stunning. That medal, but there was a cool one. It was for the Zulu War, and it was a friend of mine with Vancouver Fire. It was his great granddad's, and there was only 10,000 awarded. And I was looking through my UK medals book to research it and to find out the value of it, just out of curiosity, like how rare is this medal? and it was about 500 pounds or something. So pretty impressive, like $1,000 for a single medal. Like I just told him just for insurance sake. But one of the cool notes it said was Gandhi was a recipient of this medal, and he was a stretcher bearer during the war.
Wow.
So he was a conscientious objector, but he served still. And it was like, wow, like of 10,000 medals, Gandhi was one, and my friend's relative was the other. Like now you're starting to narrow it down. Like I know it's still 10,000 medals, but when we deal with like CVs and stuff where it's hundreds of thousands awarded,
Yep.
it's you start to work on those medals that are really rare, and you're like, wow, like this craft that we do is a privilege. And I've been approached by a museum to mount 2 actual Victoria Crosses.
Incredible.
And that is like goosebumps. I've offered to do it at no cost, to fly out to, actually I'd have to drive to Calgary with all my tools. They wanted it swing mounted, which I don't know how you feel about swing mounting. I find it much more difficult to have everything lined up perfectly.
I cringe. I love the look too, but I cringe doing them. And I've seen enough over the years that have been chipped away that they swing mounting over time, the damage is unreal compared to court mounting. They're not going anywhere. But
That's
yeah,
right.
Victoria
And
Cross, wow.
it'd be unreal. And the one stipulation I'd have, of course, I'd still do it. But my one thing I would ask is, I know that the medals that they're hanging on, or the ribbon they're hanging on, have likely been remounted, but I'd ask if I could keep that ribbon, right? Just as a little souvenir. Like this ribbon held an actual Victoria Cross, as a little geeky piece in my man cave here. But yeah, I hope one day I'll be able to. I know Leah has mounted one, I think, or has carefully restored one. I don't think she remounted it necessarily, but she cleaned them up. That must have been unreal. I'm super jealous for her. And it's so nice when we see those posts on our page, and I call it our page or our group. We cheer each other on, right? There's no one's trying to steal business from anyone. I think if you're good at something, you have no problem getting business. If someone from Victoria wants to mount their medals, I'll say, hey, you can get someone locally if you want. And they're like, oh no, I'm a big fan of your page. I want you to mount them. No problem, I'll do it. But I make that offer. But you also have to be careful.
I referred some to you, to Pat, to Chris, the Martell, simply because if it saves shipping, and I'm going to recommend somebody who is going to treat them amazing, and you are all in that category. So
that's right. Yeah, you do have to be careful and ensure that you trust those people, and I think we definitely do have that trust. But sometimes people are looking for a specific thing that mounter does, whether it's using metal wire, right? As some people want the traditional thread, or fishing line, or whatever they want. So sometimes you have to ask them, like, what are you looking for? Because if I send you here, that person doesn't use that, and there's nothing wrong with it, but you're looking for this. So and then metal mounters change their techniques. I've seen a couple mounters, I won't say who because I don't know if they want it known, but I've seen their materials change. And ironically, I don't think I'm not tooting my own horn or anything, but I've seen them change to some styles that I use, and I'm like, I wonder if there's a connection there, or if it's just something that we naturally evolve into and go, oh, actually this is a better one.
And I think part of it is we learn, we kind of all did this in a vacuum. Some people were trained, it got handed down. I was given sort of the guy who did it in Sarnia, took me under his wing a little, but still didn't give me all of the tricks. I've noticed that we still hold back a little bit, but and then you kind of develop your system in a vacuum. But then when you came up with this group, now all of a sudden when people are sharing what they do, it opens up ideas. Oh, I didn't think of that. So I just want to say, on behalf of Heritage Medals and myself, I can't thank you enough, first of all, for being my first guest, but really for being that unifying factor that brought this group together. I know I'm going to have you on other episodes. I just want to say thank you, Andrew.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I know I could talk all morning, all afternoon about this. It's just a geeky passion, and I get people from other departments and stuff talk about medals, and I preface it with, just be warned, if you want to get into talking about this, you're going to be here for a bit. You'll have to try and shut me up. No, it's an honor, and thank you for starting this podcast. I think it's going to be really interesting for our members, but also the general public of, first responders, military, learning new things. And yeah, we'll probably say something that might be, a little off here and there just because rules do change. And hey, just bring it up in a professional manner and say, hey, I think you're wrong on this, or can you clarify this? Just bring it up in a professional way and we'll go through it. Like, I don't claim to be the expert of anything. I just know that if I don't know the answer, I have the expert resources to find it. And that's one thing I try to do now is I always post the reference material instead of going, actually, this is the regulation. I post the regulation. So thank you very much for having me. I'm really interested in hearing other guests, especially Kyle Scott's journey, because that man is the most selfless person I've ever met.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I got his permission that every episode I have a little section called Kyle's Corner where I'm going to just do a plug for him. Because we all get that message. Hey, can you help me find this medal? And it's not my forte. I can direct you to where to find the paperwork. I can read what you are given when it comes to military records, but it's not my forte. And why wouldn't you go to the guy who that's his passion and he's phenomenal at it? So
yeah, I wish the government would just take him on as an employee, because he is just the subject matter expert. And the passion and love he has is second to none. And that's just one of his projects that helps veterans and their families.
I'm going to have to hit him up for a promotional sponsorship or something for this program. So,
he'll send Andrew, you a book of stamps.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this.
My pleasure.
Each episode, we're going to have a medal word of the day. This episode's word of the day is obverse. You've heard us talk about it. And it means the side of a medal or a coin bearing the head or principal design, or essentially the front of the medal. Common theme with medals is that the sovereign's effigy, which is their side profile, their face, on a medal will always be on the obverse, the front. Royal ciphers tend to go on the reverse, which is the back. For Kyle's Corner, we'd like to give a shout out to Kyle Scott. He works tirelessly to get your family medals or the medals that you deserve and haven't been awarded yet. And we ask, reach out to Kyle. He's on Facebook. Have a little bit of patience. Nothing works quick. He does an absolutely amazing job. Thank you for listening to Medals of Mayhem, brought to you by Heritage Medal Service. This episode was pre-recorded and edited by Bad Puppy Productions. If you have any questions, comments, or medal-related trivia, please contact me at heritagemedalservice@gmail.com. Thank you.